All right, here we're looking at the area and circumference of circles. Now, the area of a circle, just like any other area, is the space taken up by the circle. It's the space inside. Circumference is a word you may not know. Oh, that was a terrible circle. Circumference is the distance around the outside. So it's a bit like the perimeter, but specifically for circles, it's called the circumference. And there are two formulas, one for area and one for circumference, which you do need to remember. Area is pi r squared, pi times the radius squared, that's what the r stands for. And circumference is pi times diameter. I didn't need to put that times there, you can just call it pi d if you want. Now, before we do a couple of examples, let's just make sure we're happy with what radius and diameter are, because we've talked already that the circumference is the distance around the outside of a circle. So what are radius and diameter? Well, radius is the distance from the middle to the outside. That's radius. And diameter is the distance all the way across. It's a bit of a wobbly line there, but the width of your circle all the way across is diameter, but from center to rim is the radius. So let's look at how to use those formulas. I'm going to want the area and circumference of this particular circle. So the area is pi r squared, which means I need to do pi times the radius squared, but the radius is 3, so it's just pi times 3 squared. 3 squared is 9, so it's pi times 9, and then I'm just going to put that in my calculator, pi times 9, and to one decimal place, it's 28.3. Now don't forget, pi is just a number. Pi is roughly 3.14, which you may know. And when you put the pi button into a calculator, all it's doing is typing out in its head 3.14 and then a few other digits. So if you just typed in 3.14 times 9, you'd get the same thing. Now, because it's area and our radius is centimeters, this is centimeters squared. Like I said at the beginning, I also want the circumference of this circle, like what's the distance around the outside, and the formula for that is pi d, so pi times the diameter. Now, I haven't been told the diameter, but if the radius is from the middle to the outside and the diameter is all the way across, well, then the diameter has to be double the radius. So it's going to be pi times 6, so it's double the radius. And again, on the calculator, pi times 6 to one decimal place is 18.8. And because it's circumference, it's just a distance, it's just a length, it's going to be just centimeters. Right, here's another one, and we'll do the same again. But this time I've been given the diameter and I haven't been given the radius. So to find the area, I need to do pi times the radius squared, but what's the radius? Well, if the diameter is 10, then the radius is 5, half the diameter. So area is pi times 5 squared, which is pi times 25, and on the calculator, that comes to 78.5 centimeters squared. And we'll do the circumference as well. It's pi times the diameter, which is pi times 10, which I don't need a calculator for once, is 31.4 centimeters. Now let's look at a slightly different one. Here, I've only got a half a circle, a semicircle. To work out the area of this semicircle, what I'm going to do is pretend it's a whole circle. I don't know if I can draw it very well, but I'm going to pretend it's a whole circle like this. Find the area of the whole circle and then just half it, because I've got half of the circle. Now we know that to find the area of a whole circle, we do pi r squared, but the radius of this pretend circle is going to be 2, because it's all the way across, which is 4. So that's pi times 2 squared, which is pi times 4, and pi times 4 is 12.6. Now that's the area of the whole circle, but like we've discussed, I've only got half a circle. So the next thing I need to do is half that, divide it by 2, and the answer is 6.3. That's the area of this shape. Now, one more thing to talk about is how to give an answer in terms of pi, because all of our answers so far, all of these examples have been decimals, but sometimes the question says give your answer in terms of pi. Now, this is the same circle as we had in the first question, so we don't have to do much more working out. But what an answer in terms of pi means is that if we go back to our original working out over here, it means we've kind of stopped here. we'd have never put the 3.14 into our calculator. We'd have left it as a symbol. So let's start from the top and see where we get to. We know that area is pi r squared, which still means we do pi times 3 squared, which is pi times 9. But then at that point, to give my answer in terms of pi, I just leave it as 9 pi. Because of how algebra works, we know that means 9 times pi. So we just leave it like that, and that's in terms of pi. And we can do the same for the circumference too. Circumference is pi times diameter, which is pi times 6 for this question, which means that circumference in terms of pi is just 6 pi. And that's giving your answer in terms of pi. Okay, there are 3 questions there to have a go at. If you want, you can pause the video and actually give them a try, or just leave the video playing as I talk through them and how to find the answers. So pause here if you want to, and I'm going to talk through the answers. So for these first 2, I want the area and circumference. Well, let's do the first one first. Area is pi r squared, which is pi times 4 squared. I've had to half the 8 to get the radius because 8 is the diameter. Pi times 4 squared, that's pi times 16, which I put into my calculator. Pi times 16 is 50.3. Next, I will do the circumference, which is pi times diameter. We've got the diameter, it's 8, so it's just pi times 8, which is 25.1. Now I've neglected my units there actually. The area is going to be centimeters squared and the circumference is going to be centimeters. Right, and then our second circle, area and circumference again. Area is pi r squared, got to remember that. The radius is 12, so it's pi times 12 squared. 12 squared is 144, so that's pi times 144, which in the calculator comes to 452.4. And the circumference, pi times diameter, which is pi times 24, because I've had to double the radius there to get the diameter. And pi times 24 is 75.4. And now one final question, then we're done. The area of the quarter circle. Now this is going to be a bit like the semicircle that we did here, but instead of dividing by 2 at the end, I'm going to have to divide by 4, because I've got a quarter of a circle. So like last time, we'll treat it as if it's a full circle to start with. We'll do pi r squared, so we'll do pi times 8 squared, which is pi times 64, which is 201.1. 201.1. But I don't have that whole circle, I've only got a quarter of it. So I have to find a quarter of this number, 201.1, which means dividing it by 4. And dividing it by 4 gets me, divide by 4, equals 50.3. It's area, so it's going to be meters squared this time. Right, so that's area and circumference of circles. Those formulas at the top, area equals pi r squared and circumference equals pi times diameter, you do have to remember. But after that point, it's just substituting in. Just remember that sometimes you have to double the radius to get the diameter or half the diameter to get the radius. But that's it. Hope that helps.